to just open with a word of prayer for us. Ramuruti, please assist us with opening for us with a word of prayer. Brother Caton, are you in the session? Okay. I would like to request Skatlero Mpafudi, if you can open with a word of prayer for us.
Good evening, colleagues. Let's close our eyes and pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the beautiful day that you have just blessed us with. First, dear Matlahoshi, as we're about to get into this conversation, may you lead the way, that dear Matlahoshi. Dula malemeng a bohle ba tla buang Ntate Matlahohle, le rona re fa ditsebe tsa hore re utlwe melaetsa e tswang ho bana ba hao Ntate Matlahohle. Re tsamaise in everything that happens today. Guide our steps, first dear Matlahohle, and cover us all. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, my sister. My name is Mahlatse Moloto. For those that don't know me, I'm part of the CYM in the Northern Synod, and I'll be assisting in leading the session for today, just the facilitation part, and then I believe Brother Shepherd will be coming in to assist in terms of moderating. We just want to welcome you, like I had said earlier, to tonight's session. We believe it will be an impactful session like all the other sessions that we had. I'm just going to give over to Brother Pule, Mwaledi Parapara, to just introduce the guests and to formally just welcome the session. Thank you. Brother Pule?
Thank you, Chairperson of the session, my sister Mahlatse Moloto. With that brief welcoming, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in Christ, amen. On behalf of the CYM General Synod, I warmly welcome you to today's session. Today, as we all know, that this is our 11th episode of the CYM Ecumenical Online Conversations. Today we'll be dealing with the topic or the theme, education as a vital component of the youth. Sister Chairperson, my task is a brief one, just to introduce the moderator and the guest speakers for today's session. As you all know that we've been struggling to get hold of Brother the Dr. Shepherd Nyambe. However, he sent me his bio so that I can read it to this session. So I'll start with the moderator of the session, the Advocate Dr. Shepherd Nyambe. Our moderator for today is Dr. Advocate Nyambe. He's a dedicated, proud member of URCSA, the United Reformed Church in Southern Africa. He was born and raised in the Ngweze Presbytery within the regional Synod, Namibia. Now, his journey of faith and service began at a very young age, and he has faithfully served in various roles as a Sunday school teacher, the brigade officer, and advisor to the PUE with a strong emphasis on education and youth empowerment. Now, Dr. Nyambe joined the Christian Youth Ministry in 2017 and was officially robed in 2019 at Ngweze congregation. He currently serves as the chairperson of CYM Namibia Regional Executive Committee and as a member of the CYM Central Executive Committee at General Synod level. Now, outside the church, Mrs. Chair, Dr. Nyambe is a distinguished scholar and a professional. His academic achievements include the following. He holds the bachelor degree in applied biochemistry with the University of Namibia. He holds the executive diploma in project management with the AGE, United Kingdom. He also holds the master's degree in environmental laws with the St. Anthony College in Namibia. And lastly, Dr. Nyambe holds a PhD in scientific research and innovation with the YSB University that was acquired in India. Dr. Nyambe is an independent researcher and consultant across sectors such as green hydrogen, biomass, and oil and gas. He also contributes to academia through his role at the University of Namibia, where he serves as the Deputy Chairperson of the Research and Innovation Subcommittee under the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Development. Currently, he's pursuing his studies in political science, specializing in international relations and public policy. While not yet married, Mrs. Chair, and without children, he embraces his roles as a devoted uncle, a brother, a son, a nephew, and a grandson, grounded in family and service. Mrs. Chair, I'll now move to the guest speaker of the session. Welcome, Dr. Nyambe. I see that you are online. Thank you very much, Doc. I'll now move to our guest speaker, our Reverend Professor Lephaka. Our Reverend Lephaka is a distinguished theologian and ordained minister in the United Reformed Church in Southern Africa, currently serving at URCSA Ratanda in the Standerton Presbytery in the Southern Regional Synod. He also serves as a scribe for the Synod's core ministry for proclamation and worship, that is the CYM and PMW. Academically, Professor Lephaka is an associate professor of theological ethics at the University of South Africa, UNISA, where he earned his doctorate in systematic theology. Now, his research explores the African and liberation theology, political and business ethics, race and human rights, and issues of land and environmental justice. He's a widely rated researcher by the National Research Foundation, NRF, which affirms his growing influence and recognition in the academic community. Professor Lephaka has published various articles and topics such as colonial poverty, reconciliation, and land depossession in South Africa. His scholarship reflects a deep commitment to justice, ethical leadership, and theological transformation in both the church and society. Thank you once again to everyone who has joined us at this session today. With the introduction being done, we now prepare to delve into what promises to be a rich and insightful conversation. Now, it is my pleasure to now hand over to our moderator, Advocate Dr. Nyambe, who will guide us with today's session. Over to you, sir. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
A very good evening to everyone. I hope I'm audible enough, and apologies for the delay. Brother Pule, can you perhaps just confirm if I'm audible before I proceed?
Yes, you are audible, my good sir.
All right, thank you. So, brothers and sisters, welcome once again to today's session, the 11th episode of the Ecumenical Conversation. And our guest speaker being Reverend Professor Lephaka. I've been practicing the name. I'm hoping I pronounced it properly. Yes, so welcome, Reverend, and it's wonderful to have you. And thank you. Without further delays, Reverend, we live in world, whereas education has emerged as a very important element of survival, of livelihood, and even when it comes to the competency in terms of how we approach certain challenges within the world. And
Yes.
coming from the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 5 to 10, which really emphasizes on the importance of acquiring knowledge and wisdom. I would like you to start by introducing what education is, and also try to differentiate between formal education and informal education as we dive into this conversation.
Okay, thank you very much, and evening to everyone. Particularly, I think the moderator of the session, Dr. Nyambe. In terms of the definition of education, I believe education is a process in which critical thinking is unleashed. What do I mean by that? I believe education, it's not like using the approach of banking where something is deposited into you because you come in as an empty shell. I don't believe in that. I believe education, it's something that they unleash in you, where for instance, like scholars like Paulo Freire would indicate that education is the practice of freedom. Meaning, why does he say that? Is that he says, because of your existence as a human being in the world, through your existence, you create history, but at the same time, you create a knowledge. What is that knowledge? Knowledge, it's you acquiring certain principles in life where you distinguish between what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is evil. So through that process, as a person who comes into the world, there is something in you that is the so-called informal education, where you learn through interaction with the environment, with people around you. That is what we refer to as informal education. Now, what formal education do? Formal education involves the process of nurturing, where we unleash what's already inside you, with the hope that going to acquire skills to create, rather than giving yourself over to be used to create wealth. Because I think we need to move away from the thinking that I study for the purpose of finding a job. I know, given economic and social conditions that we find ourselves in, normally we want to study to find a job. I don't think that's the purpose of formal education. The purpose of formal education, it's manifold, but there are two important things that I think are very important. We need to deal with. One, it's to study so that you can find solutions for your own context, but also find solutions for the world at large. But secondly, education is done so that you can create the employment for others, rather than you having to to give yourself over for employment. So in short, education would be the expression of freedom, the expression of liberation, but also to encourage everyone who study to ask the question, why? Because it doesn't assist us to acquire all these qualifications if we don't ask the questions of why. So the moderator, I think as a start, I'll end there.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Moruti. You've mentioned something of education as an enabler that allows critical thinking. And coming to that aspect, how does education therefore equip young people, especially the Christian young people, with an ability to be able to think critically and align the critical thinking to creativity, and as well as how they present themselves in terms of confidence, in terms of knowledge, and other aspects of engagement?
All right, thank you very much. as I've indicated, because education is a process, so it's something. That's why they speak of lifelong learning. It's a process. So one of the ways for one to acquire confidence, it's that you must always acknowledge the fact that you are not an empty shell that needs to be filled with something that's something with its knowledge. That's not how education is. There is something already that you have that through formal education or even through informal education gets to be unleashed, that is taken out of you, so that at least you develop critical thinking. And by critical thinking, I want us to always, that's why, for instance, scholars like Frantz Fanon, they always say, my body, you must always make me ask why. So this is what I would encourage, and I do exactly the same thing in the church, even to young people, that they must always ask the question why. If you want to take everything as gospel truth without asking the question why, you will find yourself in a very difficult position. It would be easy for you to fall into the trap of being in a cult. So we don't want to develop cultic thinking. You must critically think, why am I doing this? Is it for the benefit of, is it for the greater good? Is it right? Is it wrong? Will it benefit the greater society? Will it benefit me? And of course, because we are Christians, we must also ask the question, is it biblically allowed and of course encouraged? So that's what we need to deal with, Moderator.
Thank you, my Reverend. Now, in terms of how young people present themselves, would you say that education plays a role? Can we differentiate someone that is educated and someone that is not educated based on the knowledge they express, based on how confident they are, and what kind of ideas they bring forth in terms of discussions, in terms of activities, in terms of just generally as young people when they interact?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a loaded question. I don't know, are you, and I think a lot of people are familiar with the most dangerous person is an educated fool. What do I mean by an educated fool? It's somebody who's just certificated, somebody who doesn't think beyond the now. That's the most dangerous person. Now, what an educated person, whether formal or informal, it's one person who acknowledges another human being, because the start of being smart and the start and signs of showing that you're educated is to acknowledge the humanity of another person. The day you start being arrogant to a point where you don't see the other person, you must know that you are actually closer to becoming an educated fool. Now, how do I see an educated young person? Now, I'll tell you, it's people who ask questions. I always encourage young people at church, even at the university. You must always ask questions. Do not go with the crowd. Do not feel pressured to think you understand because other people seem to be understanding. If you don't understand, you must ask questions, including in the church. Even when decisions are taken, you must ask questions why that decision was taken. Critically question those decisions. And of course, I mean, sometimes it's just unfortunate that when young people ask questions, people always hide behind the fact that young people are not respectful, and if you can't answer questions, you must not hide behind the fact that young people are not respectful. You must just answer their questions. So the moderator, simply, how do I see an educated young person and also somebody who's critically thinking? It's somebody who questions and somebody who accepts only when they fully understand something that is being spoken to. So there are a few things I think that I've mentioned. One, to show that you're educated, we want you to recognize the humanity of another person. But secondly, you must be able to ask questions and don't allow yourself to be pushed around. Thirdly, make your own research. I mean, just as a side point, and I always say this to people, do not, when things are being said, you know, nowadays we live in the age, it's called the fourth industrial revolution. You know, knowledge is just at the palm of our hands. So if for instance, I say something, you can just get confirmation of it quickly within a few seconds through the palm of your hand. So young people must utilize those skills for the benefit of society, but also for their own growth, but also for their own empowerment.
In the past, Reverend, and you've mentioned a very critical area where is you've cited the notion of educated fools. In the past, education was seen as the commodity that you could only acquire by going to school. But again, you've mentioned something whereas you've mentioned the fourth industrial revolution, which comes with digital technology, which comes with a lot of means and ways in which people can get information. And if we are to look at acquiring knowledge or acquiring or being educated as an element of acquiring information, how would we then in today's time say one can become educated? Is it just a matter of accessing information because it's available? It's a matter, or is it a matter of accessing it, being able to analyze it and digest it and then apply it? As you mentioned, that being educated, number one is, of course, understanding and respecting humanity. And then, of course, the applicability of the information that you have that brings in critical thinking and knowledge sharing as such.
Okay, thank you very much, Moderator. And I think we must underline critical thinking here for what I'm going to say. Not all knowledge that is available at the palm of our hands is a necessary knowledge. When you apply critical thinking, you would be able to distinguish between fake news and of course proper knowledge. Of course, there's a catch here because knowledge is easily accessible. People would assume that everything that you find online is the truth. Or let me take it further. People think if, for instance, I can make a post on social media or different whatever platform, and I get 1,000 likes, I get 1,000 retweets, I get 1,000 comments. Because of that, people think that is truth because it's followed by many people. That's why I said we must underline critical thinking. Every knowledge, including knowledge that is in the book, you must, for instance, as you acquire that knowledge, you must start asking questions about what you've acquired. Is this important for my context? Is this going to empower me to change the lives and livelihood of my community? Is this going to allow me to come up with long-lasting solutions? Or is this going to create another shell that is just, in simple terms, is a bot, something that can be used for production and creation of wealth? So, and of course, the acquiring of knowledge, given the fact that because of the different the fourth industrial revolution, acquiring of knowledge has changed. And of course, we need to be very critical. I mean, nowadays, I see, even when I teach, people just use different platforms or ChatGPT quickly. People utilize AI tools quickly. And there's no problem with utilizing those tools, by the way, but it becomes a problem when it makes you lazy to think and think critically. I think it would be in our interest to utilize those tools to speed up the critical thinking process, so that we acquire knowledge, so that at least we change our situation, but also come up with solutions for problems that are there in the world. Of course, young people, it's upon us as young people to come up with solutions. If we have not seen that the world is changing, whether it's changing for the better or for the worse, it's up to us to make sure that we take care of this world and make sure that knowledge is protected, and we allow everyone to have access to acquiring knowledge.
Thank you once again, Reverend. In the definition of education, you mentioned something very important where, as you said, it's also a capability of practicing freedom, but most importantly, being able to distinguish between right and wrong. That speaks very much to us as the Christian youth ministry members, because we are not just young people, but we are young people in Christ as well. So the morality of us wanting to be educated is also associated with the spirituality of the spiritual side of our life. How would you relate, or what is the integration of education and spirituality in that aspect?
Thank you very much, moderator. I think there are a number of things that I would mention. One, I would start with the notion of ethics, which is what is very critical from the question that you've asked. Particularly us as Christians, you would know, for instance, when we speak about ethics, it would involve principles of right, wrong, good, and evil. Why is that very important? And I'll just make an example of so that it's clearer for everyone. Let's take a scientist who's a Christian. At the back of their mind, they must always be, given you're brought up with Christian principles, there is always a question of ethics. Let's say you are a scientist who creates, let's say, uranium, so that we deal with what we saw recently with what happened in Iran-Israel conflict. As a scientist who create uranium, which is from what we're being told, which is what is being used, for instance, to create a nuclear weapon. That's what you, as a scientist, you create. But as a Christian who asks the question of ethics, you must always ask the question: is it right? Is it wrong to create uranium? Is it in the interest of the greater good? Why is it created? So these are questions as a Christian that you would normally ask. I'll take another example, which is another thing that I find very strange with Christians, with what is happening in Gaza and Israel. A very smart, learned, certificated person in that conflict would not make a distinction between the current state of Israel and the Israel that we find in the Bible. People would quickly say, I stand with Israel. When you ask why, no, because God stands with Israel. And you ask, which Israel? And they indicate, no, but the Israel that is defending itself, and then you are saying, but that's not the same Israel. I mean, just make a quick search. I mean, like really. So this is what I mean with critical thinking. So as Christians, we are called, and this is a call to all Christians to develop critical thinking. You must never leave your brains outside the church when you go inside the church, because we're then going to have a problem. You'll just be in a cult, because the next thing I'll say, let's give me all your money, and then you won't ask questions. You'll just give me all your money. So those are important things that we need to encourage. That use your brain that you were given by God. It's not wrong. In fact, God encourages us to think. That's why He's given us brains. But also, God encourages us to ask the questions of ethics about right and wrong. So these are things as Christians we need to encourage each other, brother moderator. Critical thinking.
Critical thinking and utilizing our brains. Reverend, we as young people, 30 years down the line as CYM, and looking forward to what is yet to happen after 30 years, we are trying to build a CYM that is of bold leaders that are educated, leaders that are aware, and that's where the question of spirituality and education comes in. But then for us to express that kind of bold leadership, it does not remain within the church. It also has to apply outside the church. How would you incorporate civic education in terms of how we can build ourselves? Now that we are saying we are 30 years down the line, how does civic education come into place so that it helps us build ourselves as bold leaders, that we can proudly say the CYM is an element of construction in terms of thinking, in terms of how we express ourselves, in terms of teaching, in terms of capturing the world with the word of God?
Thank you very much, moderator. Before I come to this particular question, there's something I think I've forgotten in your last question when I speak about critical thinking. And I won't mention names. I had a very interesting interaction where I was called for a workshop in another presbytery, and somebody, a very educated person, stood up and asked, but the Bible says women must walk. What's the proper way? They must wear the proper way of putting it, but they must not walk bareheaded. And the young person, and then this particular person was quoting Corinthians, and a young person stood up quickly before I could respond and said to this particular, and I was happy, and I could not show it because he was dealing with an old person. He says, but where you have just read, you must be cognizant of the context of what was being said there. Paul there was dealing with a particular problem where Paul had said for Christian women in that particular context, for them to distinguish themselves in that particular area, because there was problems of, I'd say this, there was problems of prostitution. And Paul said, for you to make a distinction between those who follow Christ and this particular problem, I would encourage you not to walk bareheaded, because there must be distinction between you and those women in that particular context. So I was happy when that particular young person invoked that, because he said context. We must be able to read things in context. So in answering your second question, when we approach, including everything, even in the outside world, outside the church, we must never shy away from utilizing the brains that God has given us, but also the God-given a right to be a critical thinker, but also for you to also express freedom of asking questions, but also disagreeing when you don't agree with something. You must never agree for sake of agreeing, because you'll have problems in your life. You must agree when you understand something and you feel that it has met a particular criteria of making sense. If something doesn't make sense, even if it's said by a professor, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter if it's said by me. So that's including even your workspace. Let's use our brains and ask questions. Even if they're uncomfortable, we need to ask those questions.
Thank you very much, Tasemurut, for that quite open and very heavy answer. You mentioned something about the ability to create opportunities, not just for oneself, but for others as well. What would you say are some of the opportunities or benefits of being educated, both in a Christian setup and as well as in general, in terms of what are the benefits or opportunities that are there if one is educated?
Okay.
And just to highlight, it doesn't really speak to what formality in terms of education, whether it's formal or informal. For as long as someone is educated, what are the opportunities that are there?
Okay, thank you. Because through formal or informal education, you would have acquired a particular skill. And by acquiring this particular skill, it's not like it's taken from somewhere and it's deposited into you. But like I've indicated, it would be a skill that has been nurtured, that was actually within you. So with those skills, you can create opportunities rather than just robbing yourself in opportunities that have been created by other people. There are a number of programs, for instance, as the CYM that we have been involved in. I've seen in different regions projects that the CYM has done, which exemplifies the acquirement of those skills and what, as young people in the church, but young people of the church, that they can do outside. I've seen in different regions CYM building houses recently. I've seen CYM being involved in your back to school project. I've seen, so there are a number of skills that CYM embodies that we can take and nurture those skills to create opportunities. I think it's clear for everyone. Job opportunities are very scarce in the world, given the social and economic conditions that we find ourselves in the world. So it would make sense that we must start thinking outside the box. You do not acquire skills for you to be hired. If that is the purpose of you acquiring skills, then we're going to have problems, because the world is no longer moving into that direction. You acquire skills so that you can create opportunities, but also to come up with solutions for problems that you see where you are, but also outside where you are. So we still need to think, because when I grew up, for instance, I'll make just an example. All of us were encouraged to go to the university. And if you go to a technical college, people would think, no, that's low of you. But if you would notice, people who have went to technical colleges, they've acquired, of course, thinking skills, critical thinking, but also they've acquired the doing skills. So it's about time that we need to complement each other. We can't all of us just acquire just ideologies. People do not eat ideologies at the end of the day. People need us to create opportunities so that the world works. The world is not dependent on only ideologies, but on opportunities that we create as people.
People do not eat ideology. That's a very critical and something that really speaks weight, especially on us young people, as we explore opportunities, as we try to fend for ourselves, to fend for our families, and of course, in this context, also to fend for our institution, the CYM, and our church. So we really need to acknowledge the fact that we need to go out of the cycles, whereas we see education as an element that is only based on certification. And of course, you've also mentioned that we are faced, especially as African nations, as an African society, we are really challenged by employment, because the kind of mentality that we went to school with was that I finish my matric, then I get my certificate, my diploma or degree, and then I get a job. But unfortunately, that has changed. We are in a world of industrialization where everything is quite different from how we started. But then as a church itself, Reverend, and the church needs an educated society. And then it comes back to us as young people, because we are the foundation, or I don't know whether I should say we are the foundation or whether we are the rooftop of the church. But in either way, we are one element that, as the world is diverting, the church looks at us to say, how do we then therefore take the church to another level? But then for us to be able to contribute in that direction, we need to have that sober mind and then apply critical thinking, which requires us to be educated. What do you think is the role of the church in ensuring that us as the rooftop of the church are educated? What kind of mechanism, what kind of support, what kind of policies and initiative should the church adapt to support young people in acquiring knowledge, be it formal or informal, but that we acquire that knowledge that we can utilize to contribute towards the growth and the strengthening of the church?
Thank you, Dr. Nyambe. Dr. Nyambe, you know, I just want to say a lot of things at once. Let me try to zoom in. If by now people have not seen how ministries, and I'll speak, I mean specialized ministries, I'll speak to CYM. I've seen a notion that says CYM is a university. And I want to say it here now. I agree 100%. CYM is a university. Why is it a university? There are certain skills that you will never get anywhere outside this particular university that I'm talking about. There are certain principles that this particular university that I'm talking about, that is the CYM, and it's very important. We must not downplay it. There are certain skills that are principal skills that CYM as a university teaches young people. CYM is a confidence builder. You can never face the world, particularly today's world, without confidence. You need confidence to go out there. Secondly, CYM, through a number of programs that you have, forces you to develop talking skills. What do I mean by that? Your meetings, how, for instance, when you have your spiritual revivals, where you get pressured through spiritual means or other means to stand up and talk about this particular Christ that who has died for us with confidence. That is a skill that you acquire from this particular university. You need talking skills to make it in outside there. Thirdly, this particular university teaches you to be a critical thinker. I wanted to say, in a nice way, teaches you also to be stubborn. That is the skill you need out there. And by being stubborn, I'm not talking about, the people who are just stubborn for the sake of being stubborn. By being stubborn, I mean somebody who stands for what they believe in. That's what CYM teaches you. Another skill that this university, that is CYM, that teaches you through your meetings, which is engagements, and it teaches you to read the reports, to prepare reports, but also to feel bad when you have failed in your role as a leader. These are skills this particular university teaches you. And I'm just mentioning a few. You need these skills to survive out there. If you are not confident, if you can't speak, if you can't stand up and ask questions, if you can't prepare reports, there's no way you're going to survive out there. The world needs these skills. You can study all you want. You can go to different universities and get certificated. If you don't have these principles and skills that you only get through this university that is called CYM, that is a servicing university, because this university services, it gives these particular skills. So what is the role of the church? Let me go to that very quickly. Perhaps it's about time that we go back to this crossroads. Our church used to have hospitals, used to have schools, and used to have youth development centers, used to have a number of projects. I think when I say we need to go back to the crossroads, our church needs to go back and ask itself the question: why are we in this world? What difference are we making here? Because I think we need to go back and reopen what we had lost through these schools and other things. There are a number of things that we have done previously that we still need to go back and do them again, because that's what the church is about. The church is not only about preaching Christ on the pulpit, but it's making sure that Christ lives through action that people can see out there. It doesn't assist us to tell people that Christ has died for us when they're hungry. People need to see that Christ has died for them by us as a church providing for them. Thanks, Dr. Nyambe.
Thank you for that great answer once again, Reverend. You mentioned something about educated fools. Now, one of the example of an educated fool is a certain shepherd Nyambe that has a PhD from a certain university, and he comes to a certain branch, whereas the most educated elder perhaps does not even have a matric certificate, and he starts now suppressing and carrying himself and rebuking whatever knowledge or whatever information that the elders are trying to give him. Now, this has become a trend, because it kind of demonstrates a trend, whereas us as young people, as we become educated, and then we start becoming noisemakers within our church and causing conflict, because we want to override the indigenous knowledge, the knowledge that has always been there, the knowledge that has been running the church, the reverend way, the knowledge that the reverends, the elders, the church council members have been utilizing. So we just want to come and override that with our so-called degrees, with our so-called foreign acquired qualifications, especially those of us who have gone out. We think maybe now we are too much. And so how do we then, or why is it important for us as young people to also come down and not really look at the qualification that we have as a true weight or as a true identifier of knowledge, but rather than look at whatever we've learned and incorporate it to what has been there, and how we then just work with whatever has been there that has been working, but develop it a little bit. What would be the advice, or what would be your input on that aspect?
Yeah. You know, they always say change is painful. And I want to add, change also requires a bit of patience. And why am I saying this? We need to be very patient. Once you acquire a particular knowledge, and of course you want to take that particular knowledge to people who have believed into a particular thing, who have held on to a core belief, and just want to change it within a day, it becomes a problem. Of course, a person like Frans Fanon has already told us that when people hold on to a particular belief, when you come with something that is different, even if with evidence, they go through what he calls a cognitive dissonance. Their brains reject it, even if they see that the color is actually red and they had believed it's white. Their brains, in a way, freezes. So for you, as a person who has acquired knowledge, you must know that particular process that people go through after they've acquired, after they have held on to a particular belief. You need to be very patient with our people. I know it's very frustrating, and I know it's time consuming. But for young people to make a difference in our churches, they need this particular thing. They need to be very patient. They need time, which they have on their side. And I want to say they need to change conditions, unfortunately, from within. I've seen a trend, and of course I don't know how prevalent this is, but I've seen where I've been as a reverend. Young people don't have patience. They just resign from councils because people don't want to change. They resist change. But I want to say to young people throughout, be patient with our people. You have time on your side. It will work on you. Try to change situations, conditions from within. It will take time, but hang on. Don't leave, because if you leave, nothing will change. We will just complain from outside, and it's not helpful to complain from outside. You need to change things from within, Dr. Nyambe.
Thank you very much. And you are right, because I've had experience with what you've just mentioned lately on patience. I've seen, I'll not mention the name of a branch, but there is a certain branch that I know of which did not have a reverend for so long, for many years. So it's like they got adapted to a certain custom of running the church through the elders and the church council as such. Now, when they got a reverend, and then he comes with that theological knowledge, and then he's trying to apply the church order, he's trying to apply, and there was a lot of resistance, and he ended up giving up, actually left the branch. And I think it's one of the example of what happens when we lack patience, especially as young leaders, as young members of the church. Now, Reverend, the church has governance structures, and that starts from as low as the church council, going all the way to the general synod executives. These structures are spoken to by certain instruments, such as the church order, various constitutions, and of course, in some instances, the bylaws. These are elements, or these are instruments that need proper scrutiny. These are instruments that are developed based on academic perspective, of course, with the spirituality aspect of it not being thrown away. But these are things that also speak to the need of education within the church. Now, how can the church, it kind of goes back to the other question I asked on why the church should support education among these, but this time around, I'm just asking it based on policies, based on governance. How can we then capitalize on education in order to ensure that our governance structures and instruments are strengthened within the church?
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyambe. You know, it's up to young people, given the fact that I've already indicated a number of principles that young people are acquiring from this particular university called CYM. It's up to young people through these skills that they must hold workshops to make sure that everything syncs together. Everyone understands policies, because at times we assume that people read, including the constitution of the CYM. You would find out later on that people don't read even the constitution of CYM. So it's up to us that we owe it to ourselves that we need to do workshops on constitutions of specialized ministries, but the church order, so that we are not found wanting. Because the church order itself and all other policy documents, which are guiding documents, are not to be used as sticks to bully people around. You know, so they are used to guide, to make sure that everything is in order and everything follows in terms of the theology of our church, in terms of the confessions of our church, but the church structures themselves. So it's up to us as young people to insist that there should be workshops in our nations for everyone, including leaders of our church. For instance, I would make an example. In our church, for us as ministers, there is a program called continuous ministerial development. And the idea behind that particular ministry is to ensure that even ministers go through refreshers course, so that we refresh our knowledge. Because sometimes we study, and once we acquire those degrees, we no longer study again. We no longer open books. We no longer read across. And it becomes a problem when you find a young person who has read the church order. Then you'll have problems, because then young people will take you head on. They will not play around. They will ask, because this is what we're encouraging, that they must critically think and ask questions. So if you are not clear, you'll be found wanting, and then you'll start saying young people are disrespectful. So it's up to us as young people to insist that there should be workshops to ensure, hey, simple things that people even understand decisions that are taken in synods. Do people read actas? Do people go through the agenda? Or people just go there and see it and they're just there? So we need to insist that even after workshops, they should be report backs, we engage, so that we're all on the same page. In this church, and I'll always say, and I'm saying it again, there is no structure of saying from up, bottom down. We're all equal in this church. That's why we've got different callings. Others are called to be ministers, others are called to be elders, others are called to be deacons, others are called, all of us are all called here. That's the structure of the Reformed Church. That's why we're a Reformed Church, because we believe that there is equality. So we need to, young people, just to stop at that, need to insist that people must buy church orders, must buy policies, must read them, but also there must be workshops in every congregations on these policies.
A great answer once again, and it calls upon us once again to utilize the brains that God has given us, as mentioned earlier. Reverend, we live in times where as there's a debate over the differentiation between skills and qualifications, but these are both pillars of education. We weigh education based on using these two pillars, but then one has to be more prioritized than the other, depending on a certain situation. How would you define skills and then define qualification in line with education, and how, as young people, should we look at what to focus on? I'll give an example, Reverend. One time I was facilitating a session in a certain place, and then this young person told me to say, you know what, we were told when we were young that education is the key to success, but unfortunately when we got to the door, we found that the lock has changed, because education is no longer a key to success. What really matters is skill. And I had to tell that young person to say, actually skills are just other parts of being educated. If you have the skills, you are educated. So it doesn't mean that education is just simply qualifications. But then how do we contextualize that in real life, especially as young people?
Thanks, Dr. Nyambe. In the analogy that you have used, that when we grew up, we were told that education is a key to success. But when we arrived there, we realized that the locks have been changed. Now, in the question that you have asked using that analogy, when you acquire a qualification, is what gets to be bestowed upon you once you have gone through the process of learning, to certify that you have gone through that particular process of learning. And of course, it includes acquiring skills. Now, skills on their own don't necessarily involve the process of certification. You can acquire skills as a human being through interaction, by creating experience, by seeing others do. So using the analogy that we have used, as a certificated person, after acquiring particular skills, would be a person who was taught, using your analogy, that to open doors with this particular key, a process is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you realize that that doesn't work, a person with a skill will let me just say this. If you have skills, you need skills to know, using your analogy, to see that actually the logs have been changed. Because if you would go with a certificated person, even with the key on the hand, if they arrive there and they realize there are no locks there, they won't even open the door, they'll just turn back. Because they were taught that you must open the door with a particular key. So even if there are no locks there, they'll just turn back and say, well, the key did not fit because there were no locks, so I turned back. So you need, so in short, the distinction that I'm making is that a qualification, it's something that gets bestowed upon you after you've gone through the process of learning, acquiring of skills. But then in terms of skills you can acquire skills informally, even formally. And perhaps Dr. Nyambe, I must add, given how the world has changed, you need both. You are going to struggle if you're only certificated without skills. This particular world requires people with skills, people who can do, people who can change, people who can create, and people who can think on their toes and come up with solutions.
Thank you very much, Kachamoroti. It has been quite a wonderful and interesting conversation, very insightful. It has been quite interesting to tap into the knowledge that you've shared with us today. Perhaps before we give it back to the chair of the session, maybe you can just conclude the session before we go into the Q&A through the chair. But as you give your conclusion, I would appreciate if you generally paint a picture on an emphasis of why the church, especially the CYM, should really take education serious in their lives.
Thank you, Chair. One, I think for the engagement that we just had, because this is how knowledge is created, through engagement. Because through this engagement, you start asking yourself critical questions. And for that, I'm thankful, Dr. Nyambe. And in concluding, I want to say, in short, education is critical, both as the process of acquiring skills, but also as a process of the expression of freedom, and that freedom involves encouraging people to critically think, but also to create opportunities and bring about solutions for challenges that we have for the world. So, having said, with this in mind, then it would make sense that the church will emphasize that people must acquire skills to survive, not only in the world, but also to survive in the church. Because without skills in the church, then we'll have problems. We'll find ourselves in a very difficult situation which the Reformed Church, given its tradition and structures, will not encourage. Our church encourages people to acquire skills, our people to engage and ask difficult questions so that we find solutions for our church. And lastly, as my parting shots to you, Dr. Nyambe, I want to say to the leadership of CYM, take care of this university. Take care of this university. It has taught a lot of people. It has created a lot of leaders, and it will create still a lot of leaders, both inside the church, but also outside the church. It will continue to empower people with critical skills that you'll never find anywhere else. And as such, look after this university and continue to grow this university. And of course, don't be hard on yourselves. You are doing a great job. Don't allow anyone else to tell you otherwise. This university is great. Thank you, Chair.
Education is the ability to apply critical thinking, practice freedom, and distinguish between right and wrong. The world has changed, and therefore it is important to develop both skills and qualification. It is the role of the youth to take up the church governance through emphasizing policies, and people need to survive not just in the world but in the church. The leadership of the CYM is encouraged to take care of the university that is CYM, but don't need to be hard on themselves because they are trying so hard. With those parting words, it has been quite an interesting dialogue, and over to you, Chair, for Q&A.
Thank you so much. Sure, this has been a very impactful, critical session indeed. One of the things that I think we have learned beyond is that we should not leave our brains outside of the church. We should not leave our brains outside of the church. We should always be those young people who ask the question, why? Why should things be done in this way? Why were things done in this way? And I think Muruti, honestly, together with Brother Nyambe, today's session has opened not only a conversation of education, really, but it has also opened a conversation of saying, as a church, are we a knowledgeable church? You know, Muruti, earlier on when we were speaking about chat GBT and your AI, you know, a question came to mind from myself that, are we a knowledgeable, lazy youth or a knowledgeable, lazy community? Because we have everything at the palm of our hands now. You know, we have people writing speeches through AI, writing speeches through chat GBT. But honestly speaking, this has been a very impactful and very educative conversation. May the Lord God bless you. I'm seeing 3 hands. I think perhaps we can take 5 hands, and then we'll just give you an opportunity to answer those questions as they come. And then also, Brother Butani, you'll just assist us in terms of the live chat if there are any questions from that side. In this order, we'll start with, I'm seeing Lerato Pasu, I'm seeing Gitumeti Moloi, and I'm seeing Brother Masube in that order. And I'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. Thank you so much. Sis Lerato? Okay, perhaps you're still trying to unmute there. Let me give it opportunity to Sis Gitumeti. You can ask your question, my sister.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Mahlatsi, with you just mentioning right now the chat GPT and the AI, I actually had a question. I think at the beginning of the session, I had Prof mentioning something about AI, artificial education. Let me just say that. So I had a question in my mind with technology or AI transforming the world the way it is doing. Do you think that our education system is preparing our youth for the uncertain future? Say that we find ourselves, or say that the traditional education system disappear. Will our youth tomorrow, or will the world be ready for such things? Because with the way things are right now, I think traditional education is slowly dying. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Masube.
Thank you, Chair. I'm on the road. I'm not sure if network will do justice, but let me just ask. Chair, Can you hear me? Can you just nod so that I can know I'm audible?
Yeah, we can hear you, Brother Masube.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Chair, you know, my issue with a topic of this nature is that the church has the responsibility towards the community. And on education, the church really needs to focus more on morality, because education without morality, we will find ourselves having educated fools or educated criminals. And the church is really not tapping into that particular space of education. The fact that we are of a reformed tradition does not necessitate that we must accept everything that is thrown to us. And that is why the church needs to be independent. The church must at least have their own private school where Christian education will be a center stage, so that we can cap the issue of morality. Because trying to teach someone morals as the church, whilst they already have a doctorate, that is why we would end up having people whom we would call educated fools or educated criminals. So what are the plans that the church has, so that maybe when we come as young people, we can then say, look, the church must at the end of the day have a school, because things would be thrown at us. Christian education has been taken out of schools and the church is quiet. So what can really be done by the church to ensure that we do justice to the community, and not only focusing on giving them skills, but morality to be center stage, so that their education and their skills can be of moral good? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, my brother. Katlego Marema.
Thank you so much. Let me just quickly in the session and all protocol observed. So my question is that how of course to Rev Prof Lephaka, so how does CYM then change its standing in terms where it is right now, and how do we incorporate educational programs out of the ones that we already have, like workshops and to actually expose every young person or a CYM member to this education thing? Because I'm thinking in the country right now we have a lot of educational programs that we are not tapping into. For example, the CITES, like there's a lot of things like that, but CYM as a whole is not tapping into that aspect because we lack knowledge, and also we don't have much wisdom or exposure to it. So how do we incorporate such activities or programs into our year plans or whatever that we do in terms of upholding the educational aspect in CYM?
Thank you so much, my sister. I don't know if there's any other question. If not, let me give over to Moruti Lephaka together with Brother Nyambe to just give their insight on the questions asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Chair. Tate Moruti, the first question was on artificial intelligence, whereas Sister Ketsume was asking about is there a way that the education systems of today are preparing the youth for the future?
Okay, thanks, Dr. Nyambe. Artificial intelligence. You know, artificial intelligence is here and it's not going anywhere. And of course, it has brought in serious challenges to your traditional formal education. Whether it's your traditional learning in classes, or including your distance learning institutions. It has brought in serious challenges. Now, it's about time that institutions of higher learning, including our church, to incorporate AI into education, both formal and informal education. The idea that you can access, like I've indicated, every information quickly should not take away the skills that you are going to acquire by reading, going through the process of reading, critically thinking, and then applying what you've read into your context, and trying to come up with solutions for the world. We must in fact incorporate AI into the process of acquiring skills, because it's not going anywhere. It's here. So people must be encouraged to, and of course, having said that, that's where the questions of morality come into place, because with AI, then there's always questions of integrity of programs of institutions, because if we use AI, then the question is, what about integrity? And luckily, AI has created tools to assist us to deal with issues of integrity. Now, we need to incorporate AI into the process of critical thinking. We must never use AI to encourage laziness, because we are going to create societies of people who cannot think. I don't know if people have noticed, there was a time when Microsoft was down. The world was on standstill for a few hours, because we are so reliant solely on these platforms. And that on its own, I think, is a sign that we need to acquire both skills to survive without what happens when these platforms crashes. So we need to find a balance between utilizing these platforms and interestingly, AI in church. In the near future, we're going to see people being lazy to prepare sermons. They're just going to use AI, say, prepare a sermon for me. And you'll be thinking to yourself, but I've heard this from someone. So we must never allow AI to encourage laziness and foolishness. Thanks. Okay. Dr. Nyambe, I think the question had to do with the uncertain future.
Okay.
Yeah,
the uncertain future was also part of the same question.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, look.
I think you can just touch on it already before we move to Brother Boysin's question.
Yeah, I think the future is always uncertain. We might prepare for it, but it's always uncertain. But I think with what I've said, that we need to incorporate AI tools in education to ensure that critical thinking, to ensure the speed up of the process, because AI was never, I don't think it was, we must never utilize it at our detriment, because if we can utilize it at our detriment, it will be, our society will be done. We can't produce a society if people can't read, people can critically think, people can ask questions, people who are just there. We can't have such. Yes, thanks.
Yeah, and maybe to just add on that, and it's quite very, you've made it quite very clear. AI is here to stay. So I think it's just a matter of creating an adaptive measure, whereas we utilize this thing that has come for us, but then of course you've emphasized on the need of ethical considerations, and of course ensuring that uh, we don't use it in a wrong manner, because it ends up taking out critical thinking. So actually, if it disadvantages us if we are misusing it, but it advantages us if we're using it in the right manner. But otherwise, as Reverend Prof has said, it is here to stay. We don't have a choice, and of course, the future is never predictable, and it's a matter of always being alert, being informed, and being ready to utilize our brains that God has given us. And that has been a key, a key theme of today. Now, Reverend Brother Boyson asks questions with regards to morality, where he says, we can talk of skills, we can talk of qualifications, but if there's no moral ground to these skills, to these qualifications, then there is no need, because we'll still end up having educated criminals, I quote, as he said, or the educated fools, of course, as you mentioned as well. And then he further also suggested that why can we not have a curriculum within the church which takes people through the training on just specifically on morality? He suggested that when don't we have a private school that is owned by the church and run for the church, to ensure that as we have these people with PhDs, these people with their masters, that they still have to go through a certain training which is based on morality.
Educated criminals. Yeah, you look. It's a loaded one, but I think it's there's something very important there on questions of morality, and our church, in terms of its tradition, but also in terms of knowledge that we have produced, is very strong on works on morality. It's just that we don't necessarily zoom in and focus on it. But I think Brother Masube is correct. We need, in as much as we encourage people to acquire these particular skills, we also need to continue to emphasize morality. Like I've indicated, it would be very detrimental. It will be our downfall to produce educated people with no morality. We have seen what happens in society when the society degenerates as a result of lack of morality. Because with morality, there are certain things. For instance, you know why we do the 10 Commandments before we start every Sunday. The idea was to always, and in the Reformed tradition, to make sure that people remember what they should never do and what they should do. That is, of course, it's not adequate, the idea of teaching people morality, because in every action that you do as a person, particularly as a Christian, you must always ask yourself questions of morality. Decisions that you take in a workplace, are they right? Are they wrong? Are they in the interest of people? Because these are questions that a moral person asks. So we need to really, and that's why I said earlier on that we need to go back to the crossroads, because our church used to have, because that's where the influence of morality, you studied from schools. All of us here take our kids to St. Andrews, saying what, and then you wonder why your kid later on they're starting to say, but this church of yours, because they've been taught Catholic theology, Catholic morality at a very young age. So we need to go back to those crossroads as we emphasize teachings on morality and make sure that we have that particular influence. And of course, we must also come out clearly as a church in terms of morality. What is morality to us? What is right? What is wrong? Okay. All right. Yes. So we also need to come out clear as a church, and there's works that we can just put together to indicate what we mean for ourselves as a church, as the United Reformed Church, those who follow the Reformed tradition. What do we mean by goodness? What do we mean when we say an action is bad? What do we mean when the action is right or wrong? So we need to also come out clear. So, but I agree with Brother Masube that we need to go back to the crossroads and have our schools. And I hope by having our schools, we don't want to create cultic thinking, because that's also very dangerous. And I know that's not what Brother Masube is saying.
All right, Reverend. We need to go back to the crossroads. Sister Marema mentioned something which I think also goes back to the point of the need to go back to the crossroads. Whereas she mentioned some that we used to have programs, and why don't we go back and look at these education programs and then reactivate those that can be reactivated. If there's need to create new programs, then we create new programs, but it's basically on ensuring that ensuring that we have education programs, continuous education programs, especially among the youth. Like CYM should have these programs to ensure that there is a sense or a feeling of education within the institution itself. The specialized ministry, I mean by institution.
Okay, thank you very much. And Brother Nyambe, I want to challenge the CYM here, the leadership, and I know you've got a lot in your plate. Through the Co-Minister for Service and Witness, if we are truly serious as a church, and particularly as a minister, in prioritizing education as the sister has asked here, we must always ask ourselves, and I would always refer to me. Some of us are where we are because people shared information with us. What do I mean by that? Some of us were able to go to universities because somebody else decided to share info with us, and other people did not get those opportunities because they had no access to that information. Now, I want to challenge CYM through the Committee for Service and Witness. I think the person who has asked the question spoke about the programs that are there that people are not even aware of. Through the Service and Witness, it's about time that we can collate information, and it's easy because we can even utilize these AI tools that collate information about CETA programs that are there, short learning programs that are there, opportunities that are there, and incorporate those into documents with links so that we share them with our members so that they've got access to information about opportunities. Because for the other battle that we normally don't talk about, it's the battle of information. We might, all of us say, with access to information, but it depends what kind of information. So we need to start sharing opportunities with some of us. And in fact, because this is our platform, let me say it because I was afraid of saying it. We must also just be jealous of our church and our ministry. And I always tell about the people there in my congregation, when there's a job opportunity in your at work, start at church. That's how we're going to empower each other. Wherever there are opportunities, we need to be very jealous with our church and our ministry, let's start sharing information with ourselves and make sure that we empower each other. So, when we incorporate education on the programs of CYM, I was saying all the opportunities that are there. Let's just collate them into a document or even with links so that we share. We can either bombard people with information. They'll rather cry of being bombarded with information, but it will be information about job opportunities, programs that are there for people to acquire skills.
Okay, right, okay, thank you. Were you still going or you are done, Tate Moderator?
I think it's okay. Okay. Perhaps let me just make an example. In the congregation where I'm at, I had indicated, and this is the dream that I told to them, to indicate that what would be difficult of us to make sure that a simple example that in our congregations there's internet connectivity, computers that are there so that people can come and apply for jobs in congregations in our church. People have access to internet so that they can utilize that to apply for opportunities. What would be very difficult for us? Why, as a church, we cannot create a very simple fund that will fund people for application fees for institutions of higher learning? Why can't we create those funding model? It's a small amount to make sure that we create a fund that would be very sustainable, that all of us can partake in and make sure that people have got application fees. People don't have to stand in long lines. They can just come to their congregations and apply using computers in their own congregations and having access to the internet. That's what I had asked them. These are simple things that we can do in our congregations, but also as a minister.
Yeah, I very much agree with you, Tate Moderator, and it's these are practical examples that you've given, very doable. So again, it comes back to us as CYM and ensure that we tap into this knowledge and ensure it. I'll give an example of the last scenario you've given, whereas at my own congregation, my home congregation, where's the congregation where I come from, we have something similar like a fund. It's not that big, but it doesn't help with tuition fees, or it assists with registrations only. And I'm one of the beneficiaries of that fund, because when I first went for my first degree at school, the church paid for my registration fee through that fund. So it's just certain initiatives that we can employ to ensure that there is empowerment within the church itself before we start even thinking of getting empowerment from outside. I think with that we've answered the first round of questions, but I was seeing some questions popping in through the chat. I think Sister Chair, you can help us get the questions that are in the chat, because I was trying to access them. Unfortunately, I'm not being able to get them.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, my brother. We have a question on the chat from Brother Razi. There are actually 3 questions. 1, how can we as Christian youth align our education with God's purpose for our lives? Number 2, what role does faith play in how we pursue our studies and academic goals? Number 3, are we educating ourselves only for success or also for the service to God and others? Those are the 3 questions. I believe that you caught them. I don't know if there's any other set of hands that perhaps we can take before we give our moderator and our... excuse me, brother Nyambe, is there something you were saying?
I'm saying, can you please repeat the second and third question?
The second one, it says, what role does faith play in how we pursue our studies and academic goals? Number 3 says, are we educating ourselves only for success or also for service to God and others?
I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other set of hands, let me just check with Brother Butani. Anything from Facebook, YouTube? Thank you. Those are the three questions. You may take them. Thank you.
Tatemuruti, did you get the first question on the alignment of purpose and education?
Okay, thanks, Dr. Nyambe. I did. How can aligning our education with God's purpose? Perhaps I think a simple and straightforward answer would be that the meaningful way of aligning our education to God's purpose, it would be us getting educated for the purpose of, one, uplifting others, two, of making our communities to be better, three, of humanizing other people by recognizing the humanity of those who, as a result of socio-economic conditions, have lost their humanity. So when you align your education to God's purpose, it will be you getting educated for the purpose of uplifting others, of course yourselves, creating better conditions and changing the conditions of your community, but also of humanizing others that have lost their humanity, given the conditions that they find themselves. So that's what I would say for the first one. I think what role does faith plays in our education? Yo, faith, ne? You know, the kind of faith that the Reformed tradition espouses, it's the kind of faith that encourages critical thinking. In our church, our faith, it's not just faith on things that only we don't see, but we are encouraged to think. That's the kind of faith that our Reformed tradition builds. So faith in the Reformed tradition encourages us to use our brains, to ask questions, but to work hard for the betterment of ourselves and society. But more so, faith assists us to always remember that we are not better because we have studied and others are not studied. In fact, faith and education, as they meet, they create a very humble person, because once you study, you realize how little you know as you acquire knowledge, as you acquire these particular skills. Arrogant people, it's people who have not crossed the stage of seeing that studying, in fact, pushes you to a point where you realize I actually know very little. So that's what faith does to us as you study. Are we studying for ourselves? Of course, yes and no. The yes part, it's for you, for the better, for your betterment. The no part, it's studying. It's not an individualistic process. If you have noticed, the communal process, it's an interaction between those you are partaking with as you study, but also as you engage with the material that you are studying. So it's both individualistic but also communal. That's how studying is. So we are not studying only for ourselves. We are studying for the greater good. Yes, I think I've given it my best, Dr. Nyambe.
You indeed have, and I like when you mentioned something regarding faith and education. Once they meet, they create someone very humble, and indeed, I'm very much in agreement with that. I think with that we have done all the justice to all the questions, and I'm looking at time as well. We are almost on the clock. So I think we will give it back to the chair. I don't know if you decide to give further questions or we'll close up. It will be up to the chair.
Thank you so much. Perhaps before we close up, I don't know if there's any other parting words that both the moderator and Moruti Lephaka would like to just give just before we close up or we wrap up. Just your last parting words before we wrap up. Brother Nyambe and then Moruti Lephaka, thank you.
I think for me, it has really been a wonderful session, a very engaging one. It really rings home. So it was a much needed, especially as we look forward to what goes beyond 30 years for CYM. It's a tool. I would call it as a reference point, and I think as we go from here, we have a reference with whatever we do, with whatever actions we take as leaders, as young leaders within our church, URCSA. We now have a very powerful instrument that we can use as a reference to understand that we need to be educated, both morally, both with skills, and of course, be qualified not by a document or a certification, but be qualified by the sense of humor, faith, and belief, and knowing our church structures, understanding our policies, and ensuring that these policies are understood by breaking them down to all other structures. And it is a responsibility of us as the most energetic ministry within our church to really take that responsibility. And I think Reverend has emphasized much on that it is on us. It's not going to be done by anybody else but us as young people within the church. I think that is all from my side. It's maybe my last sentence would be like, God has given us brains and we must really use these brains. This is something that will be ringing in my head henceforth. Thank you very much, Sister Ratanda.
Thank you, Brother Nyambe, Dr. Nyambe, and thank you to the leadership of CYM. I think I've said a mouthful. The only last thing I want to say again, CYM, you are doing great. This university has done wonders, and it is still going to do wonders. And as such, take care of it. May God bless you. And strengthen you. And all young people of our church, be patient, be strong, stand your ground, ask questions. Why? Thanks, Chen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Moruti. Thank you, Dr. Nyambe. I think one of the things that I'll also take home as well, Dr. Nyambe, is that God has given us brains. We should not leave them somewhere. We should carry them everywhere that we go. And I think, Moruti, you are very right to say this organization, this ministry has not only created responsible, critical thinkers as young people, but has created leaders. Most of us, even in our workspaces, people get shocked in the way in which we lead or we participate in our workspaces, and we've only learned from this organization. And thank you so much for just coming through and opening our eyes and reminding us really that our ministry is a weapon of change. It can start small in the church, but it will get to the broader picture or to the broader society, which is the community we live in. I'm going to give over to the chairperson of young people, Brother Mudula Stulo, Brother Ramokhopa, to just give his words of thanks or vote of thanks on behalf of the Central Executive. Just posing a question, Mudula Stulo, why are we having economical sessions? They said we must ask why.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brother Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson of the session. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Good evening, Professor. Good evening, Doctor. You know, my colleague today just saw the post and he was like, your church is very stressful. You have professors and doctors. And I think one thing I must say to him is that they are not educated fools. You give knowledge with sincerity, but also with humbleness. And we forever appreciate that from you. Maybe before I extend a vote of thanks, I wanted to make this comment to say, Prof, maybe, and I know I'll trigger you, and maybe it's good that you are triggered to say, you know, in our church, they always say that we should not adopt the secular world. But of lately, we, like it or not, the reality is that we are living in a secular world, and the church is mandated, or the church is forced to participate in secular activities. I'll give you an example to say that in the way that we do our financial returns and other things, the standards should be those of a secular world. And the way in which we develop policies in terms of governance policies, they should be the policies that talks to the law of the secular world. But worse is that we are also, our ministers are receiving remuneration that are defined by the secular world, which is your pay as you earn, your UIFs. And I think we need to extend this knowledge to church council members and also ministers of the word of these important lessons that we can draw into the secular world, where we don't need the church to actually be in, but we are forever forced that we need to participate. The church of lately has been in courts, and if we do not have knowledge of how an answering affidavit works, we keep on losing cases based on default, and because we lack this kind of knowledge. And I was excited, Prof, when you said you are offering for medical people, they say CPD points, continuous professional development points, for ministers of the word. And each time I think we need to equip ourselves with knowledge of what is happening. There is a case, Prof, it's still in the HPCSA, where a minister of the word is a pastor. Actually, he's being charged that he provided counseling that was actually beyond his scope. And maybe our ministers also need to be equipped. When is it time to refer a person to a professional? That here is where you draw the line. We have pastors, ministers of the word, who prayed for people and said to them, you are cured of HIV and AIDS, and they never said to these people, they must go test to make sure that indeed they are negative. And if we do not extend knowledge, and this knowledge we tend to have in spade, I don't know, club. So we don't want to see, yes, or a kama sighting arena honale. But thank you, and we believe that we will continue engaging. Sister Makati, we are having these conversations for knowledge, because we are never too old to learn. And fortunately, us, we are still too young, and this knowledge, I think it becomes very important, like you said, even at our workspaces, the way a CYM reasons in a church council meeting, or even in our own workspaces, you will then distinguish the difference. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Thank you for your attendance. Prof, thank you so much. Brother Shepherd, Doctor, thank you, my brother. We are again meeting. I'll just extend this announcement sometime, just a minute. We are meeting On the 29th of July, we are dealing with this topic, youth and business as tools for staying relevant in an unpredictable economy. And we are having Sister S. Kwabe as the moderator, and our guest is Dr. Elias Monkla. We are meeting at the same time at 18 hours. And we have said that we are having our panel discussion lunch that is happening on the 30th of August 2025 at URCSA Tshwane, where a ticket is sold at 350. And the following day, the 31st, would be on a Sunday. We are having a joint convention where we will be celebrating 30 years in existence, 30 years of service, 30 years of faithfulness across generations. Thank you so much, brother, sister Chairperson. Enjoy your evening.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Before you leave, Muruti, we're just going to close with a word of prayer. Sorry.
No problem.
I saw our big brother, Brother Mopalen Tate Mkwanyane. May you please close for us with a word of prayer.
Let's pray. Modimo ntate, modimo morwa, modimo wa re halelang. Kreste morena wa rona re a leboga modimo ga o re file sebaka ntate gore tle re kopane re le bana ba gago modimo mo o rotloeditseng ena di-leaders tsa rena tsa youth modimo ga re o kereke ya rena ya URCSA ntate, the General Synod ntate, ga ba tlile ba nna le tsona dikopano tsa bona tse di potlana go rutana ka kereke modimo le go maatlafatsana modimo. Ke ba kopela maatla ntate, o ba neye maatla ntate, ba se lape tumelong mme ba tle ba tswele pele ka tiro ya bona e ntle modimo. Gobane kereke ya rena e tlhoka yona gore re tle re rutane modimo gore go tle nne le tswelopele ntate. Baruti ba kereke ya rena ntate ke a ba kopela le bona modimo, bagolo ba kereke garo lefatshe la rena la South Africa, Namibia, Lesotho, gore le tle le bona ntate o ba godise tlase o tumelo ntate. Mabitso ke a mararo, lebitso la ntate le la morwa le la moya o halelang ka Kriste morena. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.